Hey, hey, hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. No one who loves and respects you should ever force you to chase the truth. The moment someone starts making you dig for answers, dodge questions, and piece together their lies, they've already betrayed you. Today on rSpace, honest mistakes don't require deception. Wife used my savings for her affair partner, so I took legal action and left her with nothing. It is so heartbreaking to discover that someone who you thought you knew so well has a completely different side to them. I find it so hard to express how much of a breach of trust that feels like. Honestly, it is so hard for me to imagine how I'm going to trust a partner ever again when I realize how easy it is for them to hide a whole other aspect of their life from me. I know that this is how the lowest moments of my life have felt, and I know that I'll eventually feel better one day, but it just doesn't feel like that right now. I'm going to do my best to say all of this without getting too emotional. I've known my wife since we were kids, but it was only when we were reunited after college that a romantic spark developed between us. We're in our 30s now, but we started dating 13 years ago. We've been married for 8 years now, and as far as I'm concerned, I felt like there was no one who I knew better than her. I've realized now that I definitely don't know her as well as I thought. I've always been good with math and numbers, and I remember when we were childhood friends, I would help my wife out with her math homework and any calculations that she needed to do. When I reached the tail end of high school, I realized that I wanted to go into finance, and she was super supportive. In fact, through the time that we dated and the time that we have been married, she's always helped me climb the ranks in my career. I felt like something that I would always appreciate her for, but with recent discoveries, I wonder if she was really doing that out of the goodness of her heart. It doesn't seem that way anymore. The thing is, if you want to take your career very seriously and you have a partner, you have to hope and pray that they're very understanding. After all, there are going to be numerous occasions when you'll need to sacrifice spending time with them in order to make a better life for yourself. She was always understanding in that regard, and she always gave me the extra push that I needed to make it to the next step. After all that effort, I got to a point in my career where I could relax for a bit, though there were still occasions where I needed to tap into my ambition to make things work in our favor. However, we were comfortable and money wasn't too much of a problem. However, despite that, I think it is important to mention that I've always had one weird dream since I was a kid, and that was to own a pizzeria. It's odd, but outside of my love of finance, I loved to make pizzas. They're one of the only things that I can cook better than anyone you know. For me, it was going to be my little retirement plan, so I had been saving money over the years to use for that purpose. I wanted to get a good spot and have enough money for all the necessary equipment straight off the bat. For the most part, that money was absolutely untouchable. I would use it for anything except the very worst of emergencies. And despite several tight spots over the years, I made sure to never take a dollar out of that fund. Even if I didn't add a dime to it for years, I made sure that it never diminished by a cent, and I was very proud of that. However, I eventually reached a point when I had no choice but to touch it, and as much as it pained me, I did it for my wife. She told me that her older brother, who owns a business, had found himself in a lot of debt, and he had started talking in a way that was really concerning to her. He didn't want to file for bankruptcy, but at the same time, he didn't have what was necessary to pay it off. I told her that I'd talk to him, but she said he was way too prideful to want to be bailed out. Admittedly, he was a very proud man from the interactions I had with him. I suggested so many things he could try to get out of the mess, but she started to give hints that he might have been in debt to certain bad characters, and at that point, I was very concerned. So I asked her how much he needed, and she said $35,000. Honestly, that shook me quite a bit. It was roughly a quarter of the money that I had saved up, and it was going to be a massive hit to me. However, she said that she would make sure that he'd pay back the money no matter what. I asked her if she would tell him that I was the one that lent the money, but she said no. That was concerning to me because it felt like he'd be more likely to default on paying it back if it was his sister and not a third party. However, she kept insisting that she'd get him to pay back, and I didn't need to worry about that. Honestly, I didn't share her confidence. I remember that vividly. Ultimately, I come from a culture that is huge on family, and the fact that it seemed there was a potential of him harming himself made me act. I knew I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I refused to help, and he ended up doing something rash. I wonder whether my wife would be able to forgive me if I did. So, I sent the money over to her account and told her to handle it. She was ecstatic. Honestly, I had never seen her that happy before, and it sort of made me feel a little bit better about the situation. Though there was still a very big part of me that was hurt that I had to dig into my savings like that. Anyway, that was done. She told me she had gotten the money to him a day later, and I tried my best to move on from the whole thing. I threw myself into my work and told myself that I'd give it a few months before asking about a repayment plan. So 2 months after, she hadn't said anything about it. So I went to ask her about it. Her reaction was weird to me because she initially acted like she didn't know what I was talking about before it struck. Then she apologized and said she hadn't asked him yet because she didn't want to press him too much, but that she would make sure to do it before the end of the week. The end of the week eventually came around, and when I asked, he said he needed more time. So I gave him a little bit of time. After 2 weeks, I asked her again, and she came up with some other excuse. I think I asked about it twice after that, but each time there was something or the other. I told her that I was considering asking him myself since it had been almost 6 months. But she was so alarmed at the prospect. She said it would be such a bad idea because it had exposed her as a liar, since he thought she gave him the money out of her personal savings, and it would dent his pride. So I let it off because of that. The next time I asked was 3 months later, and at that point, I knew that there was no reason whatsoever why there shouldn't have been a payment plan in place. I was really starting to get agitated over it. So I asked her about it, and she said she would ask him again. She didn't seem as concerned about getting the money from him as I would have hoped, and that was pissing me off, to be very honest. A week later, she said she had forgotten to ask him, and at that point, I had had enough. So without even letting her know, I went to meet him myself. He was extremely happy to see me, and I remember that a big part of me was glad to see that he was in good health and hadn't done anything stupid to himself. We had a lot of small talk, and I finally told him that I had something serious to discuss with him. I told him that I was the one that had lent him the money, and his sister had hidden that info to protect his pride. But I was simply tired of being put on hold over such a large amount of money, so I had to come to him directly since it had almost been a year. I told him that I didn't mean to offend him, but I had no other option. I have never seen someone look as confused as he did. He was actually baffled. He said that he had no idea what I was talking about, that he had never even gotten a loan from his sister. I tried to jog his memory by talking about the debt that he owed, but he said that simply wasn't true. His business wasn't doing amazing, but it surely wasn't in the red, and it hadn't been since the year he started. At that point, I was incredibly confused. It was clear that someone was lying, but the man in front of me really wasn't failing the honesty test unless he was a prolific actor. Yet, there was my wife, who I felt like I could trust more than anyone in the world, and I couldn't see why I wouldn't believe what she had told me. I swear that I still thought there must have been a perfectly good explanation at that point. My brother-in-law made to call her, but I told him not to, and he listened. I sat there for a few minutes just thinking, but he made it clear again that he hadn't asked her for a favor of any kind. He said that there must have been something going on, and I needed to get to the bottom of it. My sister can be a very good liar when she needs to be. He didn't seem proud to throw his sister under the bus, but I think he just wanted to do the right thing. I begged him not to speak a word of it to her, and he said he wouldn't say anything. I don't think he did, which I'm grateful for. Anyway, I realized that I needed to figure out where the money actually went, and I knew that asking her straight up was not going to give me an answer I could believe, especially since I realized how easily she was able to lie to me. Whatever would have made her ask me to take money out of my savings, which she understood the importance of, had to be something incredibly important. It would never be something as mundane as a surprise, unless she found a deal on a potential pizza spot, and she never would have made that decision without me. I was baffled, to be honest. Part of me started to feel like she was the one in debt, but there was nothing I could point to that she spent her money on to that extent. Instead of stressing myself out by doing the digging, I just hired a PI and left everything to them. While it might have taken me ages to figure things out, it didn't take him more than a month to come to me with the answers. I had wired the money to my wife with the expectation that she'd wire it to her brother. Instead, she had withdrawn the money in cash over multiple transactions, and after that point, it would have been hard to figure out what she did with it. However, the PI followed my wife around as much as he could and tracked her down on 2 occasions to a house that had one occupant, a man named Kyle. He knew that based on the license plate of the car parked in front of the house, and the vehicle just happened to have registered less than 2 weeks after she withdrew the money. The MSRP of the car? $33,000. Everything seemed to connect, but the PI, who I'd recommend in a heartbeat, did his digging on it in this Kyle guy and found that he had purchased the car literally the day my wife made the withdrawal. At that point, everything had connected as far as I was concerned. She had used my savings to buy a brand new car for her affair partner. I didn't need proof of them getting intimate. There was no reason to believe otherwise. She was literally trailed to this guy's house on 2 occasions within a week, and he was someone I knew nothing about. Sure, everything was circumstantial evidence, but I refused to give her the benefit of the doubt. As soon as I got home, I asked her about the money her brother owed me, and she served up another bull excuse. That was when I got agitated, and I just told her to cut the crap. For someone who is usually very calm, she was surprised to see how angry I was. I told her I knew that she had been lying to me. She tried to defend herself and almost doubled down on her lie, but I cut her off and let her know that she'd make me a lot angrier if she lied again. I asked her to tell me the truth about where the money went. She was silent for a full minute, and I indulged her because I wanted to know what she would say. When she opened her mouth, it was some excuse about how it was a friend who needed the money and not her brother, and she had wired it to that friend instead. Oh, so you didn't withdraw the money? That part shocked her, and I'm sure she knew that her whole scheme was over. She couldn't say anything at that point, and I was super tired of the whole act, so I told her that I knew about Kyle. I've never seen her look so scared. I pointed out that she had been lying to me for almost the past year about having given her brother the money, but she had been lying and cheating on me for even longer. She didn't say anything at all, but I could see tears rolling down her face. I let her know that I'd give her 30 minutes to pack up any essentials and get out of the house, and then I left. When I got back, she was gone, and I haven't seen her since. That was 2 days ago. I don't even need advice on how to proceed because I'm about to divorce her and make sure that I get every cent back. She spent my money to keep an affair alive, money that she continually encouraged me to go out and earn, and that's not going to look good in court. I might not be able to prove the affair, but she won't have a sensible explanation as to where the money went. It just really hurts that I don't know her at all. Update. I came here some time ago, talking about my wife who borrowed a big chunk of my savings to buy her affair partner a car. It's been an arduous process, but thankfully it has come to an end. And if there are winners and losers in this, I have won, and that's enough for me. I got a divorce lawyer pretty quickly, and then got the divorce papers prepared. It was only then that I told her that she could come around to get some of her stuff. Needless to say, the divorce papers broke her, but she knew she had no right to complain or fight it. She just cried, which really irritated me. I would have melted and done my best to stop her from crying just a year ago. It's crazy how quickly someone can make you resent them. Anyway, we eventually got to the divorce process, and that's when things got fun. The financial information was necessary, and it was super easy for me to point out the wire I had made to her along with her withdrawal at the same amount. When she was asked what the money was used for, she decided to try and twist the truth in her favor. She didn't have $35,000 that she could use to explain where the money went. The only place that she could actually find $35,000 was in the car that she had bought for her affair partner. So she made up a story about how it was a loan to him and he was meant to pay back. That didn't quite hold up though, as her withdrawing the money and giving it to him in cash made any deal or contract a lot more complicated. She couldn't prove she gave the money to him, and that's why the defense fell apart. However, I was able to prove I sent her the money, another win for transaction histories. I earn a whole lot more than her, and while the first instinct of the judge was to get me to pay a soft amount of alimony, her debt to me outweighed any of that. Instead, she was ordered to pay me a pretty sizable lump sum, which is going to stretch her remaining funds pretty intensely, and then pay me alimony afterward. The alimony was basically a payment plan for her debt, and I knew that it was going to give her a much harder time too. The judge refused to reward her with much beyond her car, while I kept mine. He also ordered that she have a weekend to pack out everything that she needed, but beyond that, there were no concessions made for her, and that made me very happy. When she had to pay me $10,000 to start off her repayment, it was a pretty big smile on my face. I know I have to wait ages for the remainder back, but I don't mind. As long as it gets paid back, and it is paid back by her, it is good enough. By the point she pays everything, I might finally be ready to get that pizzeria of mine. I'm glad that things cleared themselves up, though it doesn't negate all the pain that I went through. But hey, since it happened, I'm glad that things eventually ended in my favor. She can be a very good liar when she needs to be. That's chilling. It suggests that this isn't new behavior for her, just the first time you've seen it so clearly. She's likely done things like this before. At the end of the day, whatever she spent the money on, it wasn't something she could justify. Otherwise, she wouldn't have had to lie about it. What do you think? And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.